You know, when you think of Apple, you probably picture sleek, minimalist iPhones. But let me tell you, the real story behind that shiny logo is anything but minimalist. It's a full on Hollywood drama, packed with garage geniuses, epic betrayals, and probably the greatest comeback story in business history. So, yeah, let's get into it.
So here's the big question, right? How in the world do you go from a dusty garage to the world's most valuable company? Well, the path is messy and brilliant, and it all kicked off with a couple of college dropouts who had no idea they were about to completely change the world. All right, picture this. It's 1976. We're in a suburban garage in Cupertino, California. There are no fancy boardrooms, no venture capitalists, just the smell of solder, a whole lot of passion, and an idea that was about to kickstart a revolution. Now, let's meet our two main characters. On one side, you have Steve Wozniak, Woz, the quirky, brilliant engineer who could literally make magic happen on a circuit board. And on the other, you've got Steve Jobs, the intense, charismatic visionary who knew exactly how to sell that magic. They were a total odd couple, and they were so committed they sold their most prized possessions to get this thing off the ground. Woz sold his favorite calculator, and Jobs sold his beloved VW van. I mean, talk about being all in. So, what did their first product cost? $666.66. And for that, let's just say, slightly devilish price, what did you get? A motherboard. Seriously, that's it. No keyboard, no monitor, no case. It was the ultimate DIY project for a true computer geek. Okay, so that humble little circuit board, that was just the spark. The Apple II, that was the explosion. This was the machine that took Apple out of the garage and plopped them right into living rooms all across America. And in doing that, it put them directly in the sights of a very, very big corporate giant. The Apple II was a game changer. I mean, it was the first personal computer that didn't feel like some intimidating science experiment. It was user-friendly, it had color, it had sound, and it had the first ever killer app, a spreadsheet program called VisiCalc that made businesses need to own one. People went nuts for it. By 1980, Apple was a Wall Street superstar. But, when you make that much noise, you tend to wake up the big guy down the street. And back in the early 80s, nobody was bigger than IBM. They were Big Blue, the absolute behemoth, the king of corporate computing. So this set up the ultimate David versus Goliath showdown. You had the scrappy California rebels against the suit and tie corporate titan. The whole future of the personal computer was basically on the line. So to take on IBM, Apple knew they had to get serious and aim for the big money business market. And the result? Oh boy, it was one of the most legendary flops in the history of tech. Everyone, say hello to the Apple Lisa. In 1983, this thing would have cost you just under 10 grand. To put that in perspective, that was more than an average car. And for the price of a car, you got a computer that was painfully, notoriously slow. It was a certified disaster. Okay, with the Lisa disaster still smoking in the background, Apple went all in on their next big bet, the Macintosh. And to launch it, they created what might be the most famous TV commercial of all time. It was directed by Ridley Scott, yeah, the Alien and Blade Runner guy, and it was this incredible dystopian ad that painted IBM as the evil big brother and Apple as humanity's last creative hope. The ad was an absolute masterpiece. Everyone was talking about it. The computer itself, though, a bit of a letdown. I mean, it was beautiful. It had this revolutionary point-and-click interface with a mouse, but it was also seriously underpowered and way too expensive. Sales just weren't hitting the mark, and things inside Apple started to get tense. And then the unthinkable happened. After a brutal boardroom power struggle, the guy who co-founded the company in his garage, the visionary behind its incredible rise, was fired. Steve Jobs was forced out. Can you even imagine? It was a stunning betrayal, and it felt like the soul of the company had just walked out the door. But if you think Steve Jobs just went home to sulk, you are very mistaken. He immediately went out and started a new company, Next, building these super high-end computers. And then he made a little side investment, buying a small computer animation group from George Lucas. He called it Pixar. Yeah, that Pixar. Meanwhile, back at Apple HQ, things were going downhill fast. Without Jobs and his obsessive vision, the company was just lost, totally adrift. The Apple of the early 90s was a mess. They had dozens of confusing products, a bunch of failed projects. Their market share was collapsing. By the middle of the decade, the company was literally months away from going bankrupt. They desperately needed a hero, and they were about to get one.
In a move that absolutely nobody saw coming, Apple announced it was buying Next. And by buying the company, they were bringing Steve Jobs back home. The prodigal son was returning to his kingdom, which was basically crumbling around him. Jobs did not waste a single second. He immediately slashed the confusing product lines, and then, in a move that made the entire tech world's jaw drop, he announced a partnership with his old arch nemesis, Microsoft. The message was crystal clear. Apple was back, and things were about to get interesting.
And you want to see proof that it worked? Just look at this. The iMac, with its crazy colors and all-in-one design, was a massive hit. Apple's market share jumped from a pathetic 2.6% to over 13% in less than a year. That's not just a comeback, that's a resurrection.
But the iMac was just the beginning. Apple wasn't just a computer company anymore. Oh no, they were about to change everything. First, they turned the music industry upside down with the iPod. Then they reinvented the cell phone with the iPhone. And then they created a whole new category of computing with the iPad. It was just an unbelievable streak of innovation. And here's the real secret sauce behind it all. It wasn't just one product. It was the ecosystem. Everything just worked together. Your music, your photos, your contacts, they all synced effortlessly across your devices. It was this beautiful walled garden that was so easy to live in, you never, ever wanted to leave. This quote really says it all, doesn't it? It perfectly captures the spirit of the new Apple. This was a company that was all about thinking differently, about challenging the way things were done, and betting everything on huge, bold, crazy ideas. And it's that philosophy that fueled this incredible comeback. So what's the big takeaway from Apple's wild ride? I think it's that the road to doing something great is never a straight line. It's messy, it's unpredictable, and it's filled with failures. But if you have that vision and you have the guts to chase it, you really can change the world. Thanks so much for watching.